The moment Grace Whittaker asked that question, my entire world seemed to stop. It happened on a rainy evening, in a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville, Tennessee. The storm tapped softly against the windows, while the house sat in near silence. My best friend Nathan had been away for a week on a business trip, and I had stopped by to check on his younger sister after learning she had recently returned home following a difficult year. Grace stood near the living room window, her hands trembling slightly. Her eyes carried the kind of sadness that only comes from heartbreak, disappointment, and loneliness all arriving at once. Then she looked at me and quietly said, "Can we start over?" I stared at her, confused by what she meant. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. For years, Grace had been part of my life without ever truly being part of it. Nathan and I had been best friends since high school. We played football together, survived college together, and eventually built successful careers in neighboring cities. Whenever I visited Nathan's family, Grace was there in the background, laughing at family dinners, helping her mother prepare holiday meals, or sitting quietly on the porch reading a book. She was 2 years younger than us, and always seemed to possess a calm strength that drew people toward her. Life, however, had not been kind to her recently. A year earlier, Grace had become engaged to a man she believed she would spend forever with. The wedding plans were nearly complete. Invitations had been sent, the future looked bright. Then everything collapsed. The relationship ended unexpectedly, leaving her heartbroken and embarrassed. The pain became even worse when she lost her job a few months later during company downsizing. Within a short time, the confident woman everyone knew seemed to disappear. When she moved back into her parents' home, many people offered sympathy. Very few offered understanding. That evening, as rain rolled down the windows, she finally explained what she meant. For months, she had been avoiding everyone who cared about her. She felt ashamed of her failures and convinced herself that she had somehow ruined her future. She said she missed the version of herself who believed life could still surprise her. As I listened, something inside me broke, because the truth was that I had cared about Grace for far longer than I ever admitted. I had buried those feelings out of loyalty to Nathan and respect for their family. I never wanted to create complications, so I focused on my career, dated other people, and convinced myself those feelings would eventually disappear. They never did. Over the following weeks, I began visiting more often. Not because I had some grand plan, but because Grace needed a friend. We started taking morning walks through a nearby park. We talked about dreams we had abandoned and mistakes we wished we could undo. Slowly, the sadness in her eyes began to fade. For the first time in months, she laughed. Then she started applying for jobs again. Then she started believing in herself again. Watching her rebuild her confidence was like watching spring arrive after a long winter. But life rarely changes without testing people first. One afternoon, Grace received an incredible job offer from a non-profit organization in Seattle. It was exactly the kind of work she had always dreamed of doing. The problem was simple. Seattle was over 2,000 miles away. The night she received the offer, my heart felt heavier than it had in years. I wanted her to stay. I wanted to tell her everything, but I also knew that real love never asks someone to sacrifice their future. So I smiled, congratulated her, and encouraged her to accept the opportunity. Inside, I felt like I was saying goodbye. A few days later, Nathan returned from his trip and noticed something neither Grace nor I had been able to hide. The way we looked at each other, the way our conversations seemed effortless, the way we both fell silent whenever someone mentioned Seattle. Nathan pulled me aside one evening. I expected anger. Instead, he laughed. He told me he had known for years. He said the only person who hadn't figured it out was me. A week later came the moment that changed everything. Grace invited me to a small lakeside park, where families gathered to watch the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold across the water. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Then she admitted something that left me speechless. Throughout her darkest days, she said, I had been the one person who never treated her like she was broken. I had simply shown up, again and again, without judgment, without expectations, without asking for anything in return. Tears filled her eyes as she said she finally understood something important. Love doesn't always begin with fireworks. Love always starts from kindness. And in that moment, every wall we had built around our hearts finally disappeared. Months later, Grace accepted a remote leadership position with the nonprofit, allowing her to remain in Tennessee while pursuing the work she loved. The future wasn't perfect, life never is, but it was real, it was honest, and it was built on friendship, trust, patience, and faith. Before we reach the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a second chance that changed your life? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with our community. A year later, standing beside a quiet lake surrounded by family and friends, I watched Grace walk toward me with the same smile that had once brightened countless family gatherings. Only this time, she wasn't my best friend's sister standing in the background. She was the woman who had taught me that healing is possible, that broken seasons do not define our future, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin when two people stop trying to impress each other and simply choose to be kind. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these uplifting stories reach people who may need a little hope today. As the sun set behind the water and our families celebrated together, I realized something beautiful. The strongest relationships are not built on perfect timing. They are built on compassion, patience, forgiveness, and the courage to stay when life becomes difficult. And sometimes the simplest truth becomes the most powerful one of all. Love always starts from kindness.